session, Work-Life Balance. I'm your moderator, Kira Pistablacker. So I've got a few reminders before we begin. Today's session, as with all of the virtual mentoring sessions, will be recorded and posted for later viewing. Don't forget to join us on Thursday, tomorrow, the 2nd of February at 3 p.m. for our final mentoring session in the virtual space. That one is mentor-mentee communication. So we'll have closed captioning during this live session. You can find the live closed captioning at the bottom of your screen. Zoom provides AI-powered live transcripts that need to be enabled by the viewer. So you need to click the CC button and enable auto transcription. So although we've worked really hard to make this a smooth session, there's always a chance that some members may experience audio or video lags or disruption. We apologize for them. So please direct any questions to the mentor or the moderator, that's me, via the chat function if you are uncomfortable asking them yourself. However, please feel free to unmute and put your video up there so we can see who you are. If you have any technical issues, please direct them to headquarters@aro.org and a staff member will get back to you with assistance. Okay, so with that, let's get on with the session. So the blurb for today's session reads, research can be an overwhelming environment with days-long experiments and late-night analysis sessions. The attrition of great researchers is very high as people suffer from burnout. In this session, we will talk about strategies on how to create and maintain a good work-life balance and foster a long and above all healthy career in research. So we're joined today by our two faculty mentors, Dr. Karolina Kluk, who is a senior lecturer in audiology and director of social responsibility at the School of Health Sciences at the Manchester Centre at the University of Manchester. And our second mentor is Dr. David Perez-Gonzalez, who became assistant professor at the Department of Psychology at the University of Salamanca in Spain last year. Congratulations.
Thank you.
So I'd like to start the session by asking each of our mentors to share with us their philosophy on achieving work-life balance. And I want to ask you guys to comment on whether these philosophies have changed from the time you were a student or due to any other sort of stage in your lives. So let's start with Karolina.
Well, I am sure that my philosophy has changed quite considerably from the time when I was a student. And then when I was already a lecturer, but did not have children. And now I do have children. So each stage in my life, really, I think I had quite drastically different approach to my work-life balance. So when I was a student, when I was a PhD student, I was very happy to work long hours because it just made me happy. I was very happy to progress with my research, to write my papers, to get it out. But at the same time, I didn't mind sleeping 4 hours a night if I needed to. That was absolutely fine. And that was my choice. So I would say I partied hard, but I also worked hard and I was happy with this arrangement. When I became a lecturer, the situation changed slightly because I had to teach the students. I had to be responsible for the students. And also, I suppose, if we are in the position or when we are in the position of supporting and mentoring other students and others, we have to be really strong ourselves. So at that stage in my life, I actually shifted slightly my priorities. So I was still happy to work quite a lot and work hard, but I also made sure that I took time off to regenerate, regain my energy, rebuild my energy storage, and make sure that I actually had enough energy and strength to support my students and actually to do all the teaching and research, manage everything together. When I got children, then of course you have to add into the equation looking after your children and the family. So again, your priorities change. Well, at least my priorities changed slightly in terms of being more strict and more protective of my home life, of my personal life. So what I used to do when I was probably before I had children, I would have days when I thought, oh, I really need to finish this piece of work. So I would stay in the lab longer, or I would take work back with me home and open my computer again after dinner and finish working on that paper. I didn't, or at least I tried not to do that when I started keeping children. Because then really, I mean, I did it probably a few times and you start noticing it, that you cannot give them the attention. You're basically, I started feeling unhappy with not giving enough attention to my work and also not giving enough attention to my children. So I reached the stage where I sort of sat down and I thought, okay, so what is really important for me and how do I want to split it? And how am I going to fit it all within those hours that I have available within the day? And basically that meant that sometimes I had to say no at work to certain tasks, and sometimes I had to say no at home. And that was absolutely fine, as long as you are very clear to yourself about your priorities and how your work-life balance actually works for you. So I think that's where I am at the moment. I'm basically still practicing saying no, but I think I'm much more clear on where the boundaries are and what I feel comfortable with. And how I want to structure my everyday life.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. I've taken some notes, so let's go to David and then have some discussion. And please, anyone who's in the room, feel free to throw out questions as they come. If you don't want to have them have people know who it was, just feel free to send them to me and I can read them out anonymously. Please.
Right. So, well, I have seen many similarities to your story, Karolina. Also, at the beginning, when you are a student, or at least in my case, it's very easy to become more disorganized and to mix much more work and personal life, because you probably don't have that many obligations, right? And you can use your time as you wish. So sometimes you work until very late and then you don't spend enough time with your family, with your friends, or doing the things that really fulfill you and that are indeed needed to keep you going, right? I have no children, but still we always have either a partner or other relatives or even friends, right? And we should give them the time that they deserve, right? So those relationships, they need to be also grown and taken care of. And sometimes when you are young, you don't realize that, right? So when I was a student, I probably would work at some times when I should be spending time with other people and not caring much about that. And that takes a toll on you. So if I've learned something, or I'm learning something, is trying to separate properly the time working and the time outside work, right? And just try to focus on each of those aspects, because if not, well, things start to get messy very easily, right? And I found myself many times that, well, if I don't have outside obligations, so I can do this piece of work at any time. So I procrastinate it, I leave it for later, then I have to do it on the weekend because the deadline is coming. So I don't spend time with my friends or my relatives, and everything becomes a huge ball that starts growing. So with time, lately I'm trying to draw a line between those two things, right? So I try to be focused at work and do everything I can there. And when I'm outside of work, just try to make or spend the best quality time with my partner or the rest of the people, or doing the other activities that really fulfill me and are needed for a balanced mindset.
Awesome, thank you. So I think if I had to summarize kind of the takeaway, the similarities that both of you talked about related to kind of as we age or as we're younger, we don't have as many obligations. And so it's easier to prioritize the list when there's fewer things to do. I'm either at work or I'm having fun. And then as you get older, you have all of these obligations kind of building on top of you. And I think what both of you are saying is in order to be able to kind of manage those obligations, what you need to do is, first of all, be aware of your priorities, right? What they are, whether they be, having relationships with your family or partner, or maybe it's building hobbies or whatever it is. You figure out what your priorities are, and you need to find a way to not have your work overwhelm all the other priorities. And you can do that by being aware of what they are. You can do that by, I think I really liked, Karolina, what you said, you have to learn to say no based on your priorities. That is something that I really, really struggle with. And so I'm wondering if you both might be able to kind of expand on how, or maybe even just kind of what techniques you've found have been most useful for you to be able to say no. And I think people might find it more interesting on the work side, but I think it also would be interesting to hear on the personal side, because I sometimes struggle with, oh, I know how much I'm invested in my work. And sometimes I come home and I'm like, why am I shutting down these ideas for no reason? It's because I don't have the bandwidth, right? And when I realize that, I go, I actually do want to do that. Let's do that. So let's pass the torch over.
So let me start, since I sort of started talking about saying no. So as I mentioned, I sort of started having to think about it properly when I started having children. And actually, probably not even then, probably even when I started as a lecturer, because I found that if you are a new person joining a group, there are always some tasks that need doing and nobody wants to do, right? So you're sitting in this meeting and the chair of the meeting says, okay, so this task needs doing. Do we have any volunteers? And as a new person, you're sitting there like, oh, I don't really want to do it. I don't really want to do it. But it's so hard. It's so quiet. I'll do it. And then you find yourself doing this thing that is going to take you a lot of time, a lot of effort, but actually will not really benefit you personally that much and will not add much to your CV. So I have to say that things that I've learned are, number one, be efficient with your time. Number two, with agreeing to do things. Think carefully about how this task is going to contribute to the development of either of your CV or to your personal development. Because when you're thinking about work, of course, you can think always, oh, I'll do only things that will contribute to development of my CV. But by doing that, you may actually remove yourself from doing all the sort of more socially responsible work or work that may lead to your personal development in other ways than just adding another tick on your CV. And still, we don't want to be the ones who are always saying, yes, I'll do it to all the really time-consuming tasks that somebody needs to do at some point. But it's probably doesn't need to be you, and doesn't need to be you always at the same time. So what I found works really well for me is looking at my diary and actually physically allocating number of hours in my diary to the task that I'm supposed to be doing. So for example, I started blocking out a whole day, 1 day a week for writing papers and research grant applications. Because if I try to do it in between other meetings, this is just not working. This is not an efficient use of my time. So I'm blocking out chunks of time physically in my diary and saying, I'm sorry, I'm not available during this time because I'm already doing something else. Another thing that I'm still trying to do as much as I can is actually not checking my emails all the time. So check your emails in chunks. So you're then being more structured and have more time. But the question of saying no, I started also saying no when I see that my diary is completely full within the sort of the core working hours. and I really do not have time to fit somebody in or a task in within, say, the coming 2 weeks or within a month. And then I get back to the person. If it's via email, I get back to them and say, it sounds really great, like a great opportunity, but I'm working at capacity at the moment, and I would be very happy to contribute to this project or to be involved in this project when I have more time, which will be, say, in 2 weeks or in 3 weeks or in a month time. Please get in touch with me again. When you're in an actual face-to-face meeting and someone says, who is going to volunteer for that, just sit on your hands and don't say, I'll do it. But I think currently most of tasks actually are sort of done in terms of asking you to do things via emails. So if I really have no capacity, I'm very clear about it. And I don't think like, oh yeah, I'll squeeze it somewhere, I'll manage to do it. I just say, sorry, I have no capacity. With home life, sometimes I just say, well, you know what, we are not going to have this, I don't know, this outing this weekend because I'm really exhausted and we really don't have time to fit everything in. Let's just scale it all down. Let's just have a quiet time at home and try to recharge our batteries so we are ready for the whole week. Also, sometimes having to say no to social events because they are also energy draining in some ways, right? So you really have to be, but it really is also personal and depends on the time in the year. It depends on your personal circumstances. So you really have to ask yourself what you really want and how you want to spend your time. But I think it's very important to be able to say no without offending anybody.
Yeah. So I've been taking some notes, right? Because that's a difficult thing to learn, to say no. And we are always learning how to do that. But it's so important to say no because you cannot do everything, right? And you are under a rain of constant opportunities many times, and things that are offered to you, or things that you could like to do, or that you could do to improve something, right? And but we have some limits, and we have to decide, and ideally, actively decide, everyone of us, how we want to well, orient our efforts, right? So it's important that these decisions are personal, right? And that they are thought based on one's priorities and goals. Because sometimes when you don't take those decisions, somebody else takes those decisions for you, right? You just let it go and you end up doing things that you were not planning to do, right? So it's important to say no. Some people may feel, and because I felt sometimes, that saying no, you are disappointing other people. And it would happen sometimes, right? If they are asking you to do something, they are expecting something from you. But you cannot please everyone. And that's a fact, right? So whatever you do, there is going to be somebody that maybe get disappointed. So the most important thing is that you don't get disappointed yourself, right? So when you decide to do something, just do it because you think it's the right thing to do. It's the right thing for you or for the laboratory, for the group, for the person around you. And also it is important not to agree to do something when you know you are not going to be able to do that, right? Because some people feels pushed to agree to do something, knowing that they are going to be unable to do that, and that's going to be trouble. So it's always better to say no at the beginning to any offering than to accept something and then find out that it's not going to be possible or that you are going to do it badly, right? So think about that when you feel uncomfortable saying no, that it's better to say no now than not being able to achieve the thing that you are agreeing to. some things that you can do when you are offered something and you are maybe not completely sure that you will have the time to do it or not, and you don't know whether to say yes or no to that thing. You can try to renegotiate, right, that offering, and try to make it fit better to what you can do, or you are able to do, and not to fully agree to what you are offered. Sometimes that work, right, and it's better for everyone to find a common ground for those things. You can also especially when it's your own personal projects, right, or your own work projects that you want to do at some time, but maybe you have too much on the table. Saying no now to that doesn't mean that you're not going to do that, right? So you can keep in mind that that's something that maybe you can delay, and you can start at a later time, and you don't need to forget completely about them, right? So these are some of the things that have helped me to manage a little bit better with everything, both at work and at home as well.
Yeah, I really like how you kind of phrase that as, it doesn't have, both of you. I liked, David, how you said it doesn't have to be a yes or no. It can always be a qualifying. What exactly is it that you need from me? If it's just this much, I have the bandwidth for that. I can give you that right now. If it's this much, that's going to take a bit more from me than I have. And I really liked, Karolina, how you said, it doesn't have to be you. I think as academics, sometimes we're so preoccupied with, the optics of how we're going to perceived at that pivotal point in our careers that we spend the time before that trying to do all of these things to make sure that people can see, the true us, and we forget about who the true us are, and people can see that irrespective, right? Somebody who sees, somebody who is kind of working on themselves and doing their hobbies and stuff, it's going to come out anyway. And so I think that kind of keeping in mind, it doesn't need to be you. If somebody else can do the job better as well, like maybe it's good to say no. Maybe it's good to see what the outcome will be with not just you at the center. So I liked both of those answers. Did you have anything else to comment on each other's answers, maybe?
No, I think it's all really great. I just want to comment on Warren's comment, because he said a challenge here.
Yep.
I was like, right, am I going to say no here?
So I was going to let you take this one.
I'm not going to show you this week's schedule because I'm actually away at the moment. So my calendar is all in pieces, not my usual schedule. But I can show you one of the other weeks, and I'm happy to share it. There are some personal details in there, but hey ho, there we go.
Thank you.
So that's my sort of usual week. So you see what I'm doing, more or less. You see that I blocked out 2 days for different types of work. So I have agreed to take this as art. It's the social responsibility role for school, and it has allocated 0.2 of FTE in my contract. So I block out the whole day for doing that. If I have meetings that I need to attend in my capacity as the SR director, then I slide in other meetings into that Monday, but otherwise I try to focus that work on Monday. Then I have Thursdays usually for grant work, as you can see. Now the orange beads, this is my children. My daughter is climbing, so I schedule her climbing sessions, and you can see here on Friday, I need to go and pick up vegetables from my local, it's called Calderdale Vegetable Share, Crop Share. So I have to go and pick it up from the shed. There are 2 big bags of fruit and vegetables waiting for me there. So this is also scheduled in. I'm not sure whether, you see here as well, Amanda, that means that this is my personal trainer. So I go exercising. So you see, I sort of put in things here and there, and then I have loads of meetings with the students. I try to put all the student meetings in one day so that I actually focus again all my attention on PhD work. So it's all scheduled in there. This is another PhD. So I have some gaps in here. This is general sort of school meeting. So I have to keep it blocked. Otherwise, I would have here some other sort of research related and student related meetings in there as well. And of course, if I have teaching scheduled, then sometimes teaching may have to happen here on those days, but I try to keep it free as much as possible. So here we go. That's my diary.
Well, that's
challenge
wonderful.
accepted.
I'm not that much organized myself, I have to say, and I don't have fixed days to do things, but I of course allocate and have as reminders in my calendar the important meetings and important things where I need to be, right? But for the rest of the things, I mostly work on a task list, right? So instead of pre-allocating some time to do things, I have the list of things that I need to do, and new things go in that list. I try to keep it more or less organized with the most important ones at the top, and I just try to go through that list when I'm not in other mandatory things, right? Like teaching or meetings or that kind of things. So it's a different way of organization, yeah.
Yeah, I think I try to do a mix of the two. But I think another, like, not an issue per se, but something that I think a lot of trainees face is the kind of discontinuity in your kind of email accounts and calendars and that kind of thing. So I, for example, working at the NIH, I'm not allowed to put in my personal calendar. So my kind of work schedule is on my work email, and then my personal is on my personal. So sometimes things fall through the cracks, but I think this kind of gets it to what you were both saying before about kind of at the different stages, you have different obligations and different things that happen. And I almost feel like at the postdoc stage, things get a lot more complicated. And then maybe the stage after that, they kind of come back together. And I feel like there are a lot of postdocs who, myself included, the longer I am a postdoc, the more things feel like they're very chaotic at the moment. Like, where is I'm giving this talk that encompasses my grad work and my postdoc work. Where is the data for this located? How do I get it onto that computer? All of these kinds of things that I guess just like work balance. But I think that what's interesting in all of this is like you're developing these skills, right, as you get to the point at which you need to use them to have the most successful professional life and personal life. And so I think I just want to kind of segue into, I really liked this discussion we had about like scheduling and kind of how to address the tasks that you need to. And so I think I wanted to just kind of extend on this conversation we were having about like priorities and building relationships to ask about setting boundaries. And if you could maybe comment on things you think are kind of have been most helpful in each of your lives to setting boundaries when you needed them the most. Because I think sometimes we have kind of, like you were saying, Karolina, you just kind of sit on your, you got to sit on your hands so you don't say yes to everything. But I'm just wondering, have there been times when you've really needed to establish a boundary and you've tried and tried, and then you've finally done something and gone, okay, this is what I needed to do in the end?
That's a difficult one.
Oh, sorry.
I suppose, as David said, if you feel that you need to say no to something, then don't delay, don't wait and agonize over saying no, just say no. and say no in a nice, kind way, indicating that it's not that you do not like the person or you do not like the project or you're not going to do that just because you are physically unable to do it, and because you also really value your personal life, your other part of your life. Like, of course, we can always, I remember at some point I was sort of sitting in one of the meetings and thinking, oh yeah, surely I can squeeze it in somewhere. It sounds so exciting. I can squeeze it in. And then I sort of had to almost talk to myself and say, come on, just have a look at your diary, think about it. Are you really going to be able to squeeze it in your diary, in your work time? No, it's going to eat into your personal life. Do you really want it? And then you think, well, what are your children going to say about that? Are they going to be happy? What are you going to do? Put them in front of the TV? Well, maybe not. Yeah. So, you sort of have to take those steps back. What I also wanted to mention, so you saw in my diary, the exercising, which I find very, very important. So this was like scheduled session, but I also make sure that I go for a run. And sometimes I find myself working and thinking, like, oh no, I cannot possibly take this half an hour or 1 hour out of my diary because I'm so busy. I really do not have time for exercising. And then I force myself to actually take this 1 hour out. I go for a run, I come back, and I feel so much better and so much more efficient. And then I can complete those silly tasks that need to completing in no time. Otherwise, I would be sitting there and agonizing over all those things that have to happen. And probably I wouldn't have finished them in this hour. So I just wanted to emphasize the importance of sometimes realizing that something that may sort of feel like it's probably not the best choice, but it actually in the end is. I don't know really how to explain that, but basically look after yourself actively. And before saying yes or saying no, just think twice about all the pros and cons. And basically see where the scale gets you. Sometimes maybe you will say yes and you will be happy with that. And other times, maybe you will be much happier with saying no. And, it's just a matter of thinking about it instead of just acting on the impulse. I think that's probably my biggest advice. Do not act on the impulse, but also do not agonize for days and days with saying no if you have to say no. Yeah.
So I agree 100% in the exercise part, right? Because, well, many of us have a very sedentary job, right? Many of us spend a lot of hours in front of the computer, right? And exercising is something that has, to me, several benefits, right? For once, it takes your mind out of everything else. So you don't get out of work and keep thinking about it, but you need to concentrate on something different, right? And it's something good that you actively do for yourself. And you also need to acknowledge that, to take care of yourself. That's something that helps you to continue with the rest of your tasks, right? Which sometimes are not so gratifying. About the exercise and other activities, it helps me to have some fixed times and to have the obligation of doing that, right? I go climbing like your daughter, right? And I have a group and we meet twice a week at a given time. So I have that obligation towards our other people. So when it's the time to do that, well, I feel bad if I don't do that. I feel I'm disappointing these other people if I don't stop working, right? So that's something that really helps to separate things, right? Because if it's optional, you may just as well keep working and see, well, I will do it later, I will do it another day. But when you have this kind of obligation, well, things are clearer. And to me, it's something very helpful.
Yeah, definitely. And I think this kind of this nicely kind of could segue us into a conversation about mental health as well, because we have been talking about a bit of physical health. But before we do that, I've had a question come to me in the chat. So I'm just going to read it out for you and you guys can both respond as you will. The question is, do you feel you can have more time to build a family once you become a faculty member? Or is there no better time? Is there no better time? It is you who sets the boundaries. So I guess the question is, when do you guys feel is the right time to start a family?
I think it's very personal. I don't think that in terms of career progression, there is any best time. I have PhD students who are starting their families now, start having small children. It's fine, it's possible. We provide them with a lot of support, and it's great to see them being able to have their family while they're doing their PhDs. We have postdocs who have families and who are starting their families, just getting their first babies. It's also possible. As young or sort of early career researcher or early career lecturer, faculty member, right? I would say, of course, it's also possible. First year of being in the sort of permanent position, I found it very challenging. So I would say if you have any choice, try not to do it in your first year of the permanent position. But otherwise, any time is really good time. As long as it's fine for you, you feel ready for it, you feel that it's the right time for you, just go for it. I mean, there is a lot of support available, at least in the UK. We do make sure that we support our colleagues who are going on maternity leave or on paternity leave, who are starting their families. It's very important. And it's really only up to you. I don't think there is the best time. I mean, I can imagine that if you wanted to sort of to think about the career progression and how challenging life is, you probably would say, well, you know, start having a family after having had 30 years of experience in a permanent job, then you have everything established. You have established your research, you have established your teaching, everything is great. But life is not like that, right? We don't have 30 years to wait to be in the academia and then decide to have families. And anyway, it would be boring, I think. So if you want to have a family, just have a family and enjoy your life. So yeah, just do it whenever it's right for you.
Yeah, I agree. I agree that it's a very personal decision. And well, from my point of view, I don't have children. I said before, right? I live with my partner, which still it's not the same, but still it demands something from you as well. And it's I see it's a difficult decision, but you cannot be sure of how it's going to be the future, right? You cannot expect that things are going to be this way or the other in the future and then delay that kind of decisions. I think it's possible to combine both things at any stage, only that you need to be very sure of your priorities again, right? Of what you want to do and how you want to do things. And then, well, once you have things clear in your mind, just go for it. And actually, it can help in some ways to stabilize yourself, right? Because having that kind of obligations at home, it may help you decide when it's time to be working and when it's time to be at home with your family.
Yeah. I also don't have any children, so I can't provide any specific advice, but my recommendation would be to the person who asked, I think one of the things about AERO in particular and like the auditory neuroscience community is how welcoming people are. And so I would encourage you to just, if you're in a situation and you're not really sure about how to handle it, find someone else who is in the same situation and reach out to them. I think that's my kind of blanket advice for everyone when we're doing these professional development kind of things, because people who I've just kind of cold reached out to have always been very kind and friendly. And so best thing you can do is crowdsource, right? So
Can I just add something?
Please
do.
do.
So,
yeah.
Yeah, so first of all, a bit of a disclaimer. So I have two girls and they are 9 and 14. And I've been at Manchester for just over 15 years. So I had my first child in the second year of my sort of permanent position. But also what I wanted to say is that with going to conferences, especially like a conference like the ARO, you always see parents with young children walking around, and everybody is super happy to have the children involved in the meetings, coming to the meetings. And there is also, if I remember correctly, there is childcare support, right, from the ARO that young parents can apply for. Yeah.
Yep. Yep. Warren just put that in the chat.
Oh yeah, Warren.
Yeah,
exactly.
there, yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. And it's not only ARO. I mean, there are a lot of meetings that offer the support. And in the UK, we also have specific support for parents and carers if you have to go away and you need to take your child with you, or you need to arrange extra care. We have extra bursaries available to parents. So it's all possible. And also, if, sometimes even if you're sort of, childcare is always difficult, right? It's challenging, and challenging to make sure that childcare actually overlaps with your working times. It's actually easier when the children are younger, because then we send them to the nursery and there's a fixed time from 9 till say 5:30 or 6. They are at the nursery, they are properly looked after. But then the primary school time comes in, and all of a sudden the primary school finishes at 3. And it's like, goodness me, what do we do afterwards? So you always have to sort of arrange this extra childcare afterwards, which is also possible, but it's just a little bit more work and a little bit more organization. But it's all possible. And as I said, there are a lot of people who do it. And the community, I feel that our hearing research community is really incredibly supportive of colleagues with children and taking children to meetings and actually getting them involved. And I feel that my daughters really benefited from that as well. They know what doing research is about. They came to work with me quite often. They saw how to do a hearing test. They sort of understand things about speech perception, speech production. They can talk to their colleagues, to their friends about pitch, what is high pitch, what is low pitch. So those sort of things that normally you would not really talk about to children, they get it because they just sometimes come along and they talk to my colleague, one colleague or the other colleague, or they come to the conference, they ask questions. And I think it only feeds their curiosity. So I would say it's only good. At least that's my very polarized view on this topic and very biased. Yeah. Right. That's all I wanted to add. It was a long addition.
I completely agree with everything you've said, and ARO specifically as well. There's been some spARO initiatives at museums and things to get. I think this is external relations as well, to kind of get the public and get children involved. So I think that all
you know what I did recently with my children? In just outside of Manchester, we have a big music festival every year happening, which is called Blue Dot. It's the Festival of Music and Science. And we were, as the hearing group, we were having their special stand on sort of to inform the public about the potential dangers of exposure to loud music, to loud noise, and in general, sort of about hearing. So I took them there. And they came along and they were super happy. They put on their T-shirts, asked me about hearing. We're very happy to bring people from outside to our booth to talk to us. And they absolutely loved the experience. They love being sort of in the center of the sort of talking about research, but also being at the music festival. And they keep on asking me all the time when we're going to go again.
Yeah. I definitely agree with that. Like, I have had experiences with people. I like to show kind of people where the research happens, and you can take someone into a very like a 2-minute walk through a research lab and change their lives. They're like, wow, this is what it's like to do science. And I think it's fantastic being able to have that aspect of work-life balance where you're able to kind of like give back to the community, even if it's only like an individual here or there, where you're able to kind of just like, yeah, the stuff I do is really cool. Yeah, sometimes I think sometimes we can lose sight of that because we're so in it. And I like that you highlighted that as a way to kind of, I think that they do feedback on each other. When you've got a good home life, you feel more capable at work. When your work stuff is going well, you feel happier at home. And so I think just keeping that in mind and trying to find balance is really important.
Mhm. So I would just like to add, just from my point of view, that it's so important to keep everyone involved in this kind of situations, right? Even those of us who are not directly experiencing that, right? So I know there's still a long way, right? And that organizations as ARO are working towards that, right? But I think that one of the goals that we all together as a community should pursue is that these personal life decisions, like having children or having a particular lifestyle, are not impacted by your work, right? That you could take those life decisions independently of your career, be still able of progressing in your career regardless of what you decide for your personal life, right? So we are talking about that, and this is a good starting point. But I think that we should try to push or contribute together within the research community, right? To try to move towards that kind of goals, although it's difficult. I know there is a lot of inertia, right? But that's something that we can openly talk about to our other colleagues. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I think that really does kind of lead us into this question that I was going to ask you about mental health, because I think that's another topic here that, especially in the research community, so many of us experience a lot of anxiety, really high level anxiety, and we don't talk about that. And I think that it can lead to burnout when people feel like they're suffering on their own, and that there is this kind of guilt about the fact that maybe they're not performing as well as they used to under less stressful situations, or maybe their life has changed in a way that means that they can't perform the way that they used to. And I think a lot of the time, I think it can be one of those things where you're in your own head about it and you feel like you're not performing all that well, and your colleagues are like, you're doing fine, but the kind of impact it has on you can be kind of disproportionate. And so I guess in this conversation about work-life balance, I wanted to ask you both how you think might be the best strategy to approach conversations about mental health in the workplace, especially when it's very clear that somebody just needs some time. I think it can be difficult for them to ask it. So do you have any experience with this? Not necessarily of your own. I'm not asking anyone to necessarily self identify or anything. Just kind of, you can keep it at the top level.
Well, that's another difficult question, right? And especially because people in that situation, I think that we all tend to hide that, right? We all try to show the other people that we are fine, we are just doing our things, that nothing is happening, and we can with everything, right? And the first thing is identifying that situation, which is not easy at all. And when you identify that situation, I would say that it depends a lot on who that person is, what's your professional relationship to that person, right? Because it's not the same if it's one person that you are supervising, for instance, or it's another colleague at your same level, and what's your level of confidence with that person. If the confidence is enough, I think it's important to try to start lightly the conversation, right? And try to ask them how they feel, if they are feeling fine. maybe express your concerns that you don't see them doing well or happy enough, or that it seems that there's something going on with them, and try to have a sincere conversation with them. But as I said, it all depends on what's your previous relationship to that person.
Yeah, I absolutely agree with that. I also think that since the pandemic, we have started recognizing and talking about mental health much more than before. So I can very clearly think of quite a few cases in our group where we would say, okay, this is really getting quite stressful for you, for whoever person that would be, and saying, look, maybe you need a break or whatever, and we are very happy to support you for that, with that, and really guide you with accessing some support and some help. So we are actually in our group quite open about it, and we started. So it's absolutely fine when, like, say we have a teaching meeting and there's say extra 1 or 2 units that need to be covered. That means hours and hours of extra teaching for a few members of staff, and they are already overworked and overloaded. And it's absolutely fine if they say, well, you know what, I'm really struggling with my mental health at the moment. I don't think I can handle this. And then we say, okay, that's fine. We find somebody else who can cover this unit for the time being, and then we'll come back to you later. And in the meantime, we provide them with the support. Now, I'm going to share one more thing with you, because I just run with some colleagues from the social responsibility and Athena's One work, series of workshops on mental well-being and writing. And this is a creative writing workshop. So you can see here on the right our original advert about it. What I thought was really nice. So we offered it only to a small number of people because we had limited number of tutors that could do that. But this was really about enabling people to express themselves and support their well-being and their mental health through poetry and through creative writing. So they attended 4 workshops at weekly intervals, 2 hours. We provided them with some drinks and pizza, and with really safe environment. So this was for staff. The 2 tutors on the left who were leading it, Rebecca is the creative writing published author of books with poetry, and Tara, she is also a creative writer and a mental health specialist. So she works for Healthy Minds charity. So really they offered our colleagues a way of expressing their feelings and their frustrations in a small group, and also putting it on the paper, and guided them through this hours of workshops to the end, where people were really happy to share their written pieces of work about their personal life. And the feedback was really amazing. So here I'm just showing a few snapshots of the feedback. But they really felt that it made them feel like they were being heard, and they actually could express themselves, and really aided their mental well-being. So that's all. And I think it's very important to talk about mental health. And at Manchester, we also try to make sure that students are well aware of all the mental health services that we are providing. When I have, for example, out of office reply, I don't just say, okay, I'm not available at the moment, but I say, okay, if you need this sort of support, here are all the links and phone numbers where you can find support for mental health and for your well-being.
Yeah. And well, that's a fantastic kind of advice. And a part of trying to identify the people struggling and trying to approach them, ourselves should be able to identify that something is not okay with us, right? So if we sleep worse, if we are more edgy, if we feel that things are not going fine at some point, we should be able to step in and talk to whoever it is and ask for help, right? So please don't try to fix these things by yourselves, right? Because many times it's going to be very difficult and things are going to grow. You're going to find help from the people around you, and especially from your supervisors, right? So if you find in this kind of situation where you think you are burning out or you are having some trouble, I think it's most important to talk to your supervisor if you are a student. And maybe you don't need to give any details about what's going on, but tell them that you are not feeling good and that you need maybe to stop for a little bit. And people tends to be very, very understanding about this. Mhm.
Yeah, I definitely agree that the best way to tackle these issues is communication first.
Mhm.
Right? You have to make sure that your supervisor is aware that you're struggling, otherwise they can't help you.
Mhm.
Then what you're struggling with, I think, when it comes to work-life balance, you have to understand your priorities and how much and your relationship with the people who are there to support you. Like you said, depending on the mentor, I might share more or less of what I'm going through because I know that for them to provide me with the thing I need, which might be time, or it might be space, or it might be whatever, they need to have X amount of information, and some people need more and some people need less. And I think that
Mhm.
both of you have really spoken about like advocating for what it is that you need. And so being
Mhm.
aware of uh, your bandwidth or what you have the capability to do and focus on that. And I think that that's just fundamentally fantastic advice
Mhm.
on basically all aspects of professional lives and personal, I guess.
Mm.
So we've just hit the 12 o'clock mark. Do you guys have anything you wanted to add, or shall we take a 10-minute break or so and come back?
It's okay.
Yeah, let's do that. Everyone stretch out and take some nice deep breaths of air. And we'll see you back here at 12 minutes past 12.
Okay. Bye-bye.
Okay, it's just gone 12:12. So we'll probably be filing back from our 10-minute break soon. And we'll get started again shortly. Welcome back.
Hello.
Everyone's feeling a little bit rejuvenized, hopefully. So welcome back, everyone. In the past hour, we've had some really great conversation about kind of philosophy on approaching work life. We have spoken about ways to kind of say no based on your priorities. We've spoken about how obligations kind of change as you navigate your way from a trainee to kind of the faculty level. We've spoken about like not conflicts, calendar scheduling and task lists and kind of being on top of what you need to do. We've also spoken a little bit about mental health and having kind of conversations with your supervisor. I want to just remind everyone that we're happy for you to turn your cameras on and unmute yourselves and ask questions as they come up. We're also happy for you to throw them in the chat if you prefer to have them asked anonymously. But let's just keep the conversation going for the moment. So the last kind of thing we were talking about was mental health, and we spoke about exercise as a really great way to kind of relieve work stress as kind of like a scheduled activity. I guess the question I want to ask now relates to kind of in the moment stresses and how to deal with them, which I guess kind of relates as well to kind of how you would bring things up to your supervisor. I know that I have personally been guilty of letting things kind of overwhelm me and not thinking through how I approach a problem well enough. And so I wanted to ask you if either of you, both of you, have some suggestions for things that you can do to kind of relieve that in the moment work stress that kind of helps you have a better outcome, generally speaking.
Yeah. Do you
So
want
should
to
we start with you?
Oh yeah,
Mix
I
things
will.
up.
I will.
Go
I
for
will.
it.
Sure, of course, of course. So for me, sometimes it helps. I mean, we all find ourselves in this kind of stressing situations every now and then because we get too many things to do and too little time to do them, right? So for me, sometimes it helps to stop for a little bit. Okay. So when I feel that I have too much on my plate and I'm not performing well because of that, it helps me to stop, to think a little bit about the things that I'm doing, that what I need to do, right? And dedicate a little bit of time to the organization of the tasks, right? And that involves prioritization that we have mentioned many times before, right? And also saying no, deciding whether all the things that you are doing need to be done right now and which ones can be done in the future or in an indeterminate time, right? And then slowly pick one of the tasks and start working on that and forget about the other ones, right? And do whatever you can. Don't try to complete it 100%. Don't try to push yourself to the limit again with that task. Sometimes it's easier said than done, right? Because we have deadlines and that kind of things. So try to divide the task in small pieces and go for that small thing, do it. And when you do it, contemplate it for a little moment and acknowledge what you have done, that you have progressed, right? and you have less things to do. And sometimes that encouraged me to keep going and continue doing things. So maybe you don't get to do all the things that you were planning to do, right? But it helps me to relieve a little bit that stress, right? While keeping going and actually completing tasks and doing things.
That's fantastic advice, that taking a pause and being able to kind of reframe the situation. Like, I think it can kind of creep up on you so quickly where there is just so much going on that it feels like you're in fight or flight mode almost, like, oh, what am I going to do with all of this stuff? And just taking that pause and I'm safe, I'm sheltered, these are tasks, I can handle them, can be very I don't know what the word I'm looking for is, the most kind of relaxing way to approach the problem, to just be like,
or reassuring.
Reassuring, I think, is a better word. Thank you. Awesome. Karolina?
Yeah, so my way of dealing with stress when it's either getting too much or someone really, I don't know, pushes the wrong button. I think it's really important to have a good friend and to have great colleagues. So I really, really actually like when things like that happen, to be in the office. And then I can just step out of the office, go to one of my colleagues and say, this is so annoying, I need to vent. And we always have emergency chocolate in our offices. So I usually immediately get like, okay, which chocolate do you want? Have some of this one. This is really good for stress. So we sit down, take 5 minutes to just go really mad about it. And it's like, okay, now you can do it. Breathe, as you said, take a moment, pause, and then you can approach the problem, you can tackle it, whatever it is, and you can deal with it. So this is sort of when it happens in the office and when it's really like needing immediate reaction. When I feel overwhelmed with the amount of work that I need to complete, like I look at my to-do list and it's never ending, I actually make sure that I arrange a hike with my friend. And again, it's counterintuitive because I know I get in touch with her and say, look, I have 1 hour window. I really cannot deal with all this stuff that's going on anymore. I need to walk and I need to vent. So this sort of venting keeps coming back, right? But we basically meet and we go up the hills. I mean, I'm lucky enough to live really in a great area for hiking. So we just go, we get very tired, we talk, come back, sit down, and then I can work. And really often it is this exactly 1 hour. We walk for 45 minutes. I have some time to just sometimes take a quick shower or just eat something. I sit down and then I'm able to work. I also think it's very important to think about the situation when you receive an email and it really annoys you. And I always have this first reaction of writing an email immediately back, like, oh, how dare you? So I actually, what I do write it, but then I just save it in the drafts. And then I read it again and again and again. And after probably 5th time, I just think, well, you know what? No, I just delete it. And then I write a completely different email, which is calm and measured and, you know, without any emotions anymore in it. But I think it's, for me at least, it's really important to be able to let out those emotions and to let out the stress when I get overwhelmed, overstressed, whether it's the amount of work or some emails or someone's comments really annoying me, just having this really close person you trust to just vent it on them. I mean, and of course, I'm on the receiving side for my colleagues as well, or a friend or a family member, whoever. I don't have a dog, so I cannot vent on the dog. But that probably also could work. Yeah, so let it out. And when replying to emails, don't just send them immediately. Think about it, save it for the next day. Sometimes just save it for a few days later, and then you're able to look at the problem from a different perspective and probably de-escalate the issue rather than blowing it a little bit out of proportion sometimes.
Yeah, Sorry,
Fantastic.
Kirupa.
Oh no, I was just going to say that's fantastic advice. And the writing the email but not sending it is something I do a lot. Just get those thoughts out there and then reread them and be like, come on, that's ludicrous. You can't. No, that is not the right way to respond to this. And just forcing yourself to be aware of what's going on inside your head. Sorry, David, you were going to say.
Yeah, I was going to say the same. No, I really like that part of not responding immediately to that kind of things, right? But to let it maybe cool down, reread it, because maybe the first time you were not reading it properly and you were understanding things in a different way, right? And give them some time. And after some time, you do something else, and then you come back, and many times you actually see them in a different light.
You're taking off those fire-colored glasses and putting on the rosy ones.
Another thing, if I may to add, I had a few situations in my life where I felt that someone spoke to me in sort of a bit of a sort of say aggressive way, or the way that I didn't really like. And I also had the first instinct to my first instinct was to reply in a similar way, but then I sort of had to calm down and just de-escalate it. But also I think what is really important is, and I realized that a little bit later in life, is that whenever a person is behaving that way, it's not because you did something wrong or they have something against you. It's because most of the time they are struggling with something. And it's actually when you see colleagues behaving in such a way, then it's immediately this alarm bell should be ringing that they probably need mental health support. So it's not about them being rude towards you or being rude overall. It's about them struggling with whatever is happening in their life. So like we were talking about how to help colleagues or how to recognize that they may have a problem. And I think this is the very first sort of big alarm bell that we should be recognizing, that when people are becoming snappy, not kind, not nice to to interact with, this is when they feel overwhelmed, when the pressure is getting too much and they are not able to deal with everyday sort of little pressures and really need some support.
Yeah, completely agree. It's very easy to kind of misread frustration as aggression, anger. And so I think that emails kind of take the face-to-face aspect of communication out of it. And then now in the virtual world as well, you don't get as many of those hints that we used to rely on to make sure that we're really understanding each other. Well, I really, really liked your suggestion of venting to people as well. And it made me think about how often it's helped me in the past when I'm struggling with something specific to academic work. If I talk to people who are not in the field, I get the best advice ever. Like I was recently speaking to my family. My brother-in-law is a film actor. And he gave me advice about going in for something. He was giving me advice about a voice acting role. And he said, you know, when I go in the first time, it was the first audition he'd done for a voice acting role. And he was like, you know, the first time I go into it, I haven't hit the marks right because I don't know what I'm doing per se. And so they'll give me advice. And then when I come back the next year, they're not like, oh, here's this fool that didn't know how to do it. They're like, oh, here's this guy. I wonder if he's improved. And when he has improved, you know, they're happy for me. It's not like they're vying for me to fail, but I think sometimes because of how competitive academia can be, we imagine that maybe the people around us are hoping that we will fail so they can kind of call their way to the top. And I think the reality of the situation is that it's not like that. And I think that sometimes we don't talk to the people who can help us best because we're scared of what that might do to our ability to progress in the future. And I think, as David, you were saying, like, it would be great if as a research community, we step away from this and we say, you know, we're all just humans and we're navigating life and we're trying to do what we're passionate about. That's it. And so I do like the way that both of you have been able to take a lot of these complex problems that we've been talking about and just kind of distill them to their most basic fundamental roots. Right? Like if we communicate with each other, if we respect each other as people, it's not difficult to have work-life balance. It really isn't. And so I wanted to thank you guys for I think this conversation has been very much about work-life balance, but has had different aspects of just kind of the training experience spotted in. So I've really enjoyed the discussion.
Thank you.
So we have, yeah, thank you both. We have about half an hour left. So for those of you who are in the call who maybe haven't kind of had a chance to ask your questions yet, please don't hesitate. We're all friends here. Throw anything that you'd like into the chat or just unmute and put your video on. I have a few other questions on the list here, but if you guys just want to chat.
Yeah, no. So in the meantime, while somebody dares to show themselves and ask some questions, I would like to emphasize how important it is to talk to people outside our field, right? Because many times, well, we are in a new city, we're starting a new laboratory, we don't know anybody, and the only people that we meet is the other colleagues at the laboratory or around the university. And we all have the same problems, we all have the same pressures, we all have the same view of things. And it's all very, very enclosed, right? And many times we are missing something. And talking to other people with other experiences, with other lifestyles, with other ways to do things, is always enriching. So try to do that effort, try to make that effort, right? Not to stay only with the people from your laboratory, from the university. I mean, it's great because you have a lot of things in common, right? But try to meet other people as well. And sometimes you are going to be surprised, right? About things that you are taking for granted, but they are not. And you are going to learn a lot of things from other people. And maybe you're going to learn also how to deal with some of the troubles that you are having or that you think that you are having.
Yeah.
Yeah, this talking to people outside of your work also made me think about the importance of doing things that you really like, enjoy, and you're passionate about. Like you said, you go climbing with, and you have a group of friends who climb together, right?
Mm-hmm.
So exactly, just having some hobbies, having something outside of work that you enjoy doing, and by having something to look forward to, you are also, I think, motivating yourself to be more efficient with your time at work. Like, you know, I could spend hours and hours analyzing data and sort of thinking, oh, this figure would look better in this color or in this format or whatever. But if I know I have to finish it by X time, then I know, okay, I cannot be spending 1 hour on one figure. I have to be efficient. I have to be fast. And in the end, when you submit it for publication, nobody cares whether you spend 10 minutes on a figure or 1 hour. It still is showing what it's supposed to be showing, right? The message is there. And whether visually to you it looks better or not, nobody really cares. But then you have time to do the other things, to go and hang out with your friends, to go climbing, to go cycling, to go even just to go to the pub, have a beer with some mates. Just do something else that makes you happy. And yeah, I think that if you do things that make you happy, then you're also becoming more efficient with tasks at work. So in the end, you're ending up with better work-life balance.
And it all feeds back, right? Like when you're solving problems in your recreational activities, it's not like that communication with other people, trying to figure out how to handle a delicate situation. It's not like all of that goes to the wayside. Like all of that is experience that you then take into the lab, and it helps you with those, like you're dealing with other communication styles. You don't have the shared like vernacular that you, or the jargon that you use in your everyday research. This person might be, I don't know, in the finance industry or something, and you're able to communicate just fine. And so I think that like being a little bit more holistic about what your work-life balance actually means. It means just being a holistic person who is navigating their work and professional life and also navigating their personal life. It makes it a little bit less like, these are the things that I have to do, and more, this is the person who I am, which I think would be a nice place for us to be as a research community. And celebrating the diversity that we all natively bring, you know? So
before we finish, I'll show you just one slide that I often, I want to show you a picture that I often include in the first slide for my students to show you that work-life balance is quite a difficult balancing act. So those are my two girls when they were younger. We were at the Lake District, and I thought that this one really demonstrates very well this work-life balance, but also this very important value of support that we have around us. And when you have this support, things are possible, right? Yeah. She did manage to cross. She didn't fall in.
This reminds me of like a meme I saw recently that was it was a parent watching their two children about to work on a project together, and they witnessed the older child ask the younger child, I would like to play with you. Would you like me to assist in the building or take instruction? And I was like, wow, what a way to approach just collaborative teamwork. And it just kind of, it really resonated with me how often having that conversation at the beginning. So David, as you were saying, when somebody asks you something, you don't have to say yes or no immediately. You can redefine the bounds of what this interaction is. I think that is something that is really like in this situation going on, they're communicating exactly what they need to communicate with each other. I don't know if there was any verbalization of like, can I have your hands, or if it was just given. But when you are working together with someone, if that's your personal life or your work life, like when you're meshing, the outcome is going to be better. It is. And so I think that if we're all kind of thinking about the best interactions we can have, like the end goal is always going to be better.
Yeah.
All right. So
I stop sharing.
Thank you though. That was delightful. So we've just had another question pop into the chat. Is it okay if I read that out? Or were you going to say something, Karolina? Okay. So
I'll say it later.
Okay, perfect. So this was such an informative session. Just wonder if during the mentor PI super push, if there are any approaches to maintain work-life balance. So I believe this question might be related to kind of the point at which you start doing your applications for that tenure track faculty position, and kind of, I think we all get told that kind of, when you're on the market, your life kind of becomes a little bit unmanageable with all of the traveling and interviewing and that kind of stuff. So I think that that's what the question is relating to.
Yeah, I think that's one of the times when you feel the most stress, right, around your career, and you put a lot of pressure on yourself. You want to be there, you want to get the best job, you want to impress other people in the interviews, and that's very, very, very stressing. It's easier to say than to do, right? But you have done your work already, right? When you get to that situation, you have been doing your graduate work, preparing yourself, maybe doing just also a postdoc. So you are ready to accomplish that thing now. So try to have a open mindset, right? And things typically work out. Most people actually finds something that suits themselves. And sometimes you feel a lot of pressure to decide and find something that you think is going to be the best thing, but you cannot control the future. You don't know what's going to come. So sometimes what you think is not your first choice is probably more appropriate for you than what you thought. So yes, it's a very, very difficult time, but it happens to everyone that is in that situation. It's not only you that is happening. And that's something that you can really, sorry, I'm losing my words in English, that is something that you really can't afford to do, and you can't get over with.
Yeah, so I think that David is absolutely right that we all have to go through it. But what I also really like was that what he said, it's us putting a lot of pressure on ourselves, right? You can write this application for a job without feeling super stressed that if I don't get it, that's the end of the world, right? You write it and you say, okay, I did my best. This is the best I can do. This is what I am, who I am. And exactly, I've been working on this topic. I've been publishing, I've been doing all this work. I'm only showing you what I did. You did all this work already. It's really about being able to, for other people to see what a great person you are and what a great work you did. And what I also wanted to emphasize, so I sat on quite a few interview panels. And what I want to emphasize is that a super impressive CV is not exactly everything. When the panel is looking for a member of staff to join their team, we are also looking for someone who is going to be likable, relatable, enhance our team, not necessarily be exactly like us, but be able to make the team grow and make the team nice, person who can be nice to interact with. So if you can bring in some of your personal life into it and your personal qualities into the interview and into the whole process, that's only for the best. Even bring in some of your hobbies. That only shows that you are not only limited to work, that there is more to you. So I think it really is about taking a moment, thinking about it, what you're really doing, why you're doing it. It is a very stressful time, but do you really have to be so stressed and feeling so much pressure about completing all those applications and doing it? You can probably also do exactly the same task without feeling all the pressure. I find it very difficult. I find it still very difficult sort of sometimes to say, look, you can still complete this task. You don't need to feel stressed about it. Just sit down and do it. It's the matter of practicing it, I think. And it's really removing the pressure from yourself, because we are putting pressure on ourselves all the time, no matter what the situation.
Yeah. And also, what about dealing with unsuccessful applications, right? And dealing with rejection. It's not something personal. Sometimes you think that you have not been doing enough, you are not good enough, but it doesn't need to be the case, right? And it's not the case typically. So this is a very competitive field, and there is a lot of very good people, right, who deserve things, as probably you do. And the job of the panels is very hard. They many times have to decide between several perfectly valid applicants, right? And they only can take one. So rejections of this kind is something that is going to happen. It's something that happens all the time to every one of us. Don't take it personally. You did your best. You showed yourself in the application the best way you could. and it wasn't the right time, probably. Just continue submitting applications, and you will probably find a right place.
Yeah, I think this also kind of gets to what Karolina, you were saying before, that like you have to have flexibility in how you handle things also based on like your energy stores and the demands on you at a given time. And I think that maybe a unforeseen positive when going on the job market is that the hiring committees know you're under a lot of stress. The hiring committee, and you know, everybody knows that you're doing this thing that is super stressful. And so maybe one of the ways you can manage during that aspect of your life is just try not to be as hard on yourself, if that's going to help you navigate that that portion a little bit better. I think that we've been talking a lot about like trying to have a schedule and trying to do the things that will assist you in your kind of in your personal life. And sometimes those things are knowing when, just as you said, Carolina, having a day on the couch is what you need. You're allowed to have that. And I think just giving yourself the little additional bandwidth when you don't have enough can help. And so yeah. Okay. Any other questions from the room? We've got another 15 minutes.
Can I just add something? So we were talking about, you know, how to say no to things and how to decide what is important for yourself, right? And I think when you think about what is important, it's also, so let's focus on the academic life. So say you want to progress your career, right? So you want to you want to complete your PhD, you want to do a postdoc, you want to get an academic position, faculty position, right? And then move within the ranks. And I think that one way of deciding what is important from the academic point of view for you is actually looking very closely at the next step criteria. So what will allow me to become a postdoc? What ticks do I have to have on my CV to become a faculty? So you look at the very basic requirements that are needed for the next step, and then think about which tasks that you are doing now will allow you put ticks on your CV. And first of all, focus on those ticks. And then once you've done them, you can look at other things that you think, oh, this is a nice project, I would like to do this, or I would like to do that. But for example, say if you're a postdoc, right? And you think, okay, I need to add some teaching experience to my CV before I can apply for a faculty position. And for a year, you say yes to all teaching offers, and you find yourself basically doing only teaching and not your research, right? But what you can do is think about, okay, if I need teaching on my CV, what kind of teaching do I need? Do I need big group teaching or do I need small group teaching? Is it going to make a difference? And do I need to teach the whole module, or can I teach just single lectures, for example? And once you've done that, you demonstrated that you can teach, you put a tick on your CV, and then you move on to the next task. Okay, so you say, okay, I've done my teaching, so now I leave all the sort of teaching tasks to my colleagues who may also need it on their CV or may enjoy it more than I do. But I'm now going to focus on a different type. Maybe I need to show some leadership. So I'll look for tasks that will allow me to demonstrate my leadership skills. And then you have another tick on your CV. This is more about the career development and sort of how to think about it. But I think it's very important when thinking about prioritizing different activities and different tasks at work, and not just saying yes to everything and not feeling overwhelmed.
Yeah, I really like the idea of using a job advert almost as like a rubric for the things that you need to achieve. Like, this is my task list. If I can show these things, then I'm in with a good chance. And outside of that, it has to do with the hiring committee and whatever decisions they have to make. how much money they have funding for, what type of research they're
Mhm.
looking for, et cetera, et cetera.
Mhm.
So I really like that idea of just kind of approaching it scientifically. What are the things I need to do? Here is the statement of things I need to do. Let me just go and go ahead and check them off. And I think that kind of, in the discussion that we've had today, I think the thing that I'm taking away most about all of this is just trying to achieve clarity of thought of what your goals are. So if you know what the end goal is, then you will be able to do the things necessary to get to that end goal. And when you find yourself kind of feeling overwhelmed, if you're able to bring it back, well, what is it that I actually need to do? Let's get rid of all these other things that I said, or maybe these need to be added as well, and just focus on the things I know need to be added, and then start kind of working everything else back in when I have the bandwidth for it. It's super practical advice for everyone.
Yeah. So about the goals, that's a great thing to have, right? And it should be something that shows you the path that you want to follow. But I like to take them as a desire, right? Rather than something that I must get or achieve. Because that also can put a lot of pressure on yourself, right? And can contribute to the stress of not achieving those goals that you have set, right? Sometimes they are very difficult to achieve goals. Sometimes just, I mean, the context is not the right one. So you cannot realistically achieve them in the way that you envision them. So personally, it was something that was very hard for me to not achieve the goals that I had, right? So I've had a slow career, let's say. So I've been in a postdoctoral position for much longer than I expected, right? And I felt that kind of stress, that I was never going to achieve the kind of goals that I had set, right? And that made me feel really bad. That had me very worried about my future, right? And that was affecting a lot my performance. It was until some time that I realized that, okay, those are my goals. That's what I would like to achieve, but maybe I don't get to them. And there are other things that I could do and could make me happy, right? So sometimes you need to adapt to the situation and to be aware, or to tell yourself that you are valid for many things, and not only the ones that you have set from the beginning, right? That you could like to do that, ideally, but things can be good if you take a slightly different path. And well, that's something that it took me some time to realize, but after that, I think it improved my confidence, right? And the way that I faced both my current job and the future of my career. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think that's that's such a good insight, that like the idea of a goal should be something that you are aware of the fact that it might not happen. And I think that too often we're all, my goal is to become a tenure track faculty. Like, I am so guilty of saying this so many times, but like, is that my goal? No, my goal is to be able to do scientific research and answer questions that make me excited. That's my goal, really. But the way to get to that is to do the tenure track faculty. So sometimes I get myself in this position where I'm like, oh, can I even do it? And then I have the people around me be like, what do you mean? You're already doing it. You're doing the research, or it's going to be a job change, like a title change. You might have different tasks or whatever on a daily basis, but this like, oh, my goal, putting too much sway in it, I think, can adversely affect you, and keeping in mind what the outcome you want is rather than what you've defined the outcome as, because we have to define things to make them easier to work with, but it's not black and white like that most of the time. And yeah, fantastic point. Great. I think as well, it can be good to have with goals, or like with goals, it's good to have the kind of, this is my, it would be nice to have, but it's not a hard goal, right? Like, I'd love to be at this stage, but like, if I don't make it, I know that's not a failure. I just know that things haven't worked out that way. And just kind of that constant reframing of the sometimes negative ways we can perceive the situations that or the outcomes of the situations that we're in that have nothing to do with us. You know, it, like, one of the biggest things that kind of comes to my mind is all of those postdocs who were getting ready to go on the tenure track job search right when COVID hit, right? You have 2 years of people who had not been able to continue with their careers for no other reason than hiring freezes. And it's not their fault, you know? And so I think that, like, being kind of present and aware of your situation at all times is a very important part of being able to manage the workload that you've got coming in and how you can address things. So
I also think it's really important to acknowledge to yourself all the great things that you've done so far and achieved so far, and be proud of it. Be proud of all the research that you've done, be proud of the papers, be proud of everything else that you did. Because, you know, yes, we have those goals and aspirations somewhere out there, but take a moment sometimes, look back and look at all the amazing things that you did already and all the things that you achieved. You know, there aren't that many people in the world who did all this amazing stuff and all the amazing experiences. And then also think about all the people who you met in the process and connections that you made in the process. I think it's all so incredibly enriching, and we very often forget actually to take this moment to reflect and to think like, wow, it's actually really great. I'm actually not that bad. I did really fantastic stuff here and there, whatever. Maybe you can think of one project, maybe you can think of 10 projects or 10 things that you did really well. But I think it's really important to actually tell your brain, be proud of what you did so far.
Yep, completely agree.
It's very important.
Yeah. What a great idea to end the session on as well, just reinforcing that we're all doing very well. And, you know, sometimes we might experience a time in our lives where we are not doing so well, but we can always bring it back as long as we're aware of all of the things we've discussed and of each other, and living lives that make us happy, I think, is the biggest thing, right? If you're happy, then you can be fulfilled. And so trying to find that balance wherever you can, and acknowledging when you can't, finding ways to recalibrate, I guess, is the big thing.
Yes, and well, there's as a last thought that it's good to set some time for yourself every now and then, and just think about how you are feeling, how you are doing, and reevaluate the goals that you have, right? Because they don't come out of the air, right? You need to dedicate a little bit of time to yourself and think about those things. And once you have done that process, it's going to be easier for you to take any decisions that you need to take.
Yeah, fantastic. Right. Well, thank you both so much for such a great conversation. I hope everyone else in the session here got as much out of it as I did. I know I took a bunch of notes, and I think I'll every now and then come back to them and just remember this conversation and how kind of, I feel very, very optimistic going forward about using all of these ideas and tools and sharing them with my network as well. Being that person that, you know, when my friends had a frustrating day and they come to me and they're like, can you believe this happened? Be like, come on, let's take a pause, let's have a walk, let's chat about
You're
it.
going to have a bar of chocolate, right?
Oh, our snack cupboard at work is pretty epic, to be honest. We've got that sorted. So yeah, and I hope that all of you on this call take away some of these strategies that we've been talking about, because I do think that they are very helpful. Well, with that, I think we've got a few minutes left, but maybe we can take a little bit of an early mark and get on with our days. I know it's the evening for you both now in Europe. It's just hitting lunchtime here in the States. So I'd like to thank everyone for attending the session. I think it was really fantastic. Just a quick reminder that we've got our last virtual session is tomorrow at 3 p.m. That's the mentor-mentee communication. So I think a lot of the conversations that we were having today will be kind of expanded on. Those like specific how to talk to your mentor conversations can happen there. So Ali, is there anything else that we needed to do on the announcement front?
No, that's it. Tomorrow's the last virtual, and then we're about 10 days away from the midwinter meeting, which is scary. If you noticed me at all during the session, I was like looking at all these emails. So it's gonna be awesome.
Oh yeah, I'm so looking forward to it. Are you both going to attend in person?
Yes,
No,
I am.
unfortunately not. No, not this year.
Oh, well, David, I look forward to meeting you in person, and
Sure.
Karolina, it'll have to be another year.
Definitely. Well, thank you for being a great host.
Thank you.
Well, thank you for this conversation. I really learned a lot of things, right, that I wasn't thinking about properly. Yeah.
Great.
Yeah, it's nice to take a moment to reflect, huh?
Isn't it?
Definitely.
Yeah.
Well, thank you all so much, and have a fantastic day.
Thank you.
Okay, thank
Bye.
you.